Welcome to the webinar. This is Steve Bizanov from Media Services.
And I'm Anthony Lopez.
And we're going to go through Payroll 101 and all the basics of what you need to do and know. One of the things I want to just mention is you will have the ability to type in questions. And we will try to get to as many as possible and respond to your questions online. But with the volume of questions we usually get, we find we can't get through them all. So we do have your email addresses if you type in a question, and we'll be glad to go ahead and respond to you directly. So feel free and type your questions away. Makes it more interesting for everybody. Okay, so let's move on to the beginning. So what is an entertainment payroll company? Basically, we're talking about employer of record payroll companies. And the exact term for employer of record from a legal standpoint is statutory employer, okay? So the statutory employer is responsible doing basically all the reporting to the government, cutting the checks, provides workers' comp. So if you go from state to state, you don't have to register and do all the reporting. All the reporting gets done by the employer of record under their ID, and you're basically going to get charged for the appropriate taxes, the workers' comp, and if you're dealing with unions, all the contributions to the unions are reported to the unions and paid into the unions for you. So you don't have to deal with all that fun. So I'm going to move to the next slide. Okay. All right. Entertainment payroll companies are responsible for paying the employees, deducting, as we said, paying all the taxes. Also, additional things like child support and garnishments. We actually see a lot of that stuff. Union guilds, we said, keep payroll records, quarterly taxes and W-2s, track liability for Affordable Care Act and sick leave hours. And obviously with COVID, we ended up having to do a lot of reporting to help people file for their COVID relief loans and so forth. So, so let's move on. And why use an employer of record as compared to non-employer of record? There's more risk in workers' comp. So workers' comp rates go up high and are experience-based. So it's all pooled together under the employer of record instead of your own policies. There's also more unemployment claims with the crews going from job to job. So your rate will get affected if you're not employer of record. Also, union fringe contributions need a system in place to make that much more easy for your all the production companies. And it's easy to get union sign off with a industry type of payroll service because SAG pushes towards industry. If you try using like ADP or something, a lot of the unions aren't happy with that. Okay. And an employer of record, as we said, is known as a statutory employer. So it takes care of all the reporting. Everything is done under the ID of the payroll service and the workers' comp. And still, the production companies are considered the common law employer. So because you're responsible for hiring, firing, and supervising everybody on site. So there are responsibilities like making sure wage and hour law is followed, ACA compliance, and we'll talk about that and so forth. Okay. Working with a payroll company, what employer of record, what do you need to provide? You need to provide a certificate of insurance for putting the payroll company as an additional insured on general liability and auto liability. And you would sign a service schedule and get a service agreement. Also, we ask that you provide a script or treatment or an outline. And the reason for that is we want to make sure you're covered appropriately on the production. So if you're doing any stunts, helicopter work, or anything like that, we want to make sure that you're covered appropriately. And if you're signing a union agreement, you basically would provide that to us so we can make sure that it's administered properly. Okay. And some payroll services have additional requirements like advanced deposits. We could do a payroll based on the average cost of total production, and copy of production budget, copy of cash flow. And some payroll services will require $2 million minimum budget, and a 30% of the entire budget must be payroll. Those are other services. We don't have those the requirements on this page, but it's just you need to be aware of that. Okay.
All right. Independent contractors. So independent contractors is a conversation we have with clients and production companies all the time. For the next couple of slides, what we'll do is we'll review exactly what an independent contractor is, how it differs from employees, who's liable for those unpaid taxes, and why the IRS cares at all about how you are paying your crew. All right, so the most important thing to know with regards to payroll is that payroll companies do not pay independent contractors. The reason being that independent contractors are not considered employees by the IRS. Independent contractors are typically crew members that are hired and are independent contractors in terms of vendors. They usually operate independently and they aren't under the control of the production. Independent contractors are not the same as loan out corps, which we'll discuss in a couple of slides. So how do you determine whether someone is an employee or an independent contractor? The most important key element is controlling the worker. If you are controlling the worker, if you are stating exactly what they need to be doing, what the rate of pay is, where they need to be, what time they need to be there, you are controlling that worker and they are an employee. An independent contractor does not work under those type of parameters. All right, the common law test. The IRS common law test is actually a great way to determine your classification for your worker to see if they are actually a W-2 employee or a independent contractor. All right, so here's some of the nitty-gritty here. Instructions. A worker is probably an employee if he or she is required to follow instructions as to when, where, and how work is to be done. Again, that's a really important element of it. You know, in production, we have call sheets. On call sheets, you list everybody that's going to be working the day of the shoots, where they need to be, what time they need to be there. That right there means that they're an employee. You're already saying exactly what their position is, where they're going to be, what time they need to be there. You are in control of that worker. They are an employee. Job training. So job training, if it's done, performed in a particular manner, any form of employer provided training suggests a working employee. Next one is important also, realization of profit or loss by a worker. All right, so an independent contractor is essentially a company. They are a company that provides services, and companies can, profit from a job or actually lose from a job. They are paid by invoice. They provide a quote for their services. Maybe they underestimated and they're working at a loss. Maybe they really overestimated and they got a great profit. That's not the same at all with regards to workers. Workers are hired to do a job, typically paid an hourly or a daily, weekly rate. And also workers' compensation. An independent contractor as a company should have workers' compensation as a company, so they would be covered themselves. An employee does not have workers' compensation that is typically provided by production or the payroll company. So yes, again, so determining independent contractors. Independent contractors can employ assistants of their own at their own cost. They set the hours of work and days of work, the order of the work. They work for multiple employers. Again, the opportunity for profit and loss. They are paid by the job. They provide their own tools, and they are dismissed by contract. They are not fired or let go. All right, so independent contractor is a big thing in California. California has the ABC test, which was set up to basically help identify independent contractors versus the employees. So A, that the worker is free from control and direction under the hire in connection with the performance of the work. Again, this is all about control. You are controlling, you are directing these employees on your work site. They are your employees. That the worker performs work that is outside the usual course of the hiring entity business. Now, this is also important with regards to California. So if you are hiring somebody, a grip or, a makeup artist to be on your job, being a grip and working in makeup or in any of the production areas is contributing to the production. The creation of the content. If it were a plumber you brought onto the job, the plumbing has nothing to do with actual production and content creation, so that would apply. But the fact that they're contributing to your content, makes them part of the crew. That the worker is customarily engaged. At the ABC, sorry, go back. All right, so we have the ABC test. So let's go now to the AB5. All right, so AB5. AB5 is also applicable to California. So it started off with the Dynamics, and it was really meant to address a lot of the car hire industry. So Lyfts and Ubers, there was a huge deal with regards to them being paid as independent contractors. So new rules were kind of set up with the AB5, which went into effect last year, and they helped to qualify what the 3 elements of a true worker is versus an independent contractor. All right, so item number 1, the worker is free from control and direction in the hirer in connection with the performance of the work, both under contract for the performance of such work in fact. So, again, so imagine trying to hire a grip, shooting for your job. You got to shoot next Tuesday, you need to hire them. And what they tell you is like, sorry, they can't work on Tuesday, maybe they'll fit you in next month. That doesn't work. And that's typically how it works with a contractor. When you need to hire a plumber for your house or an electrician, you don't tell them exactly how much you're going to pay them and what time they need to be at your house. You say, you got this problem, can they fix it? They give you a quote and they say, maybe we'll be there Wednesday between 9 and 1 p.m. That's how it works with an independent contractor. Next slide. The worker performs outside the usual course of hiring entity. Again, we did this before with the ABC. If they have a position that contributes to the content creation, to the creation of your production, then they're an employee. If their business has nothing to do at all with production or content creation, for example, that plumber, then they would make sense. That makes sense that they're an independent contractor. The worker is customarily engaged in independent trade, occupation, or business of the same nature. Again, so this is a person or a business that's operating independently, that they have their own website, they have their own insurance, their own office location, signage, social media, that you can find them for services anywhere. That's an independent contractor. That's typically how they operate, and that would help identify them as a contractor versus an employee. Important reasons why the government looks negatively at misclassifying employees. Well, basically, you're not contributing to the economy. You're paying these individuals gross wages without, contributing any employer taxes. You're not contributing to Social Security, unemployment. You are not providing the workers' comp insurance. So paying them as an independent contractor, you're not contributing to those taxes, to the overall taxes of our government.
All right, now this came up earlier. Besides employees, we can pay loan out corporations. Now, loan out corporations are different than independent contractors. We can pay the corporation who is loaning out the services of the appropriate employee. Okay, so they're responsible, the corporation, I should say, is responsible for the taxes of the loan out personnel. So we can pay C Corps, S Corps, and LLCs that are organized as corporations. Okay, and they would be covered by the workers' comp of the payroll service, but there are no taxes taken out. The Fair Labor Standards Act is an act that's been around for quite a long time. And that really governs labor law, not just in our industry, but in all industries. It covers minimum wage, and the wage and hour laws are two of the big facets of that law that affect us in the production industry. All right, so with wage and hour law, there actually are different rules around the country. Most states, though, follow the federal law, which means you have to pay overtime over 40 hours. In California, you have to pay overtime after 8 hours of work on a daily basis. And there's a few other states, as you can see listed, that have similar laws to California. So we know the reality is a lot of people make deals, flat deals with their crews, but you need to break it down by hours and show it so it fits into the laws. All right. Most people will have to show overtime, but there are exempt category crew members where you can pay flat weekly rates. Okay. Such as producers, and there's different categories depending on the size of the production. There are anybody who's in a supervisory role, you can pay as a flat. We'll talk about that in a moment. And that really is covered by the term exempt and non-exempt employees. Exempt employees are not paid overtime. Non-exempt are entitled to overtime. Okay. Exempt job duties. So it can be defined as executive job duties are exempt if the employee regularly supervises two or more other employees and also has management as a primary duty. So obviously, if somebody's an assistant, you know they're not exempt because they're not management. Has some genuine input into the job status of other employees. Other exceptions apply, such as a salesperson who doesn't supervise anyone. A key test is the level of individual judgment used to get results. And who can I make exempt? It basically be paid a set minimum amount per year and per week, be paid on a salary basis, and they're performing exempt job duties. Rights of exempt employees is really no rights. They get paid to get the job done, and it's just delivering their services. So it's not an hourly type of person. And within wage and hour law, there are no guarantees. And that's what we talk about all the time is, except for the exempt categories, you can there's no guarantees for the flats. So you must record all hours worked, and including meal times and so forth. Union agreements may have daily and weekly rates for exempt positions, but there are still overtime provisions. And we always laugh at the mythical PA producer. People will try to submit payroll and call everybody a producer. A production assistant is not a producer, and it's not a titles-based law. It's a law based on function. So if you're doing exempt functions, then you're exempt, but you calling them something different doesn't really cover you in an audit. Okay.
All right, workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is also a big topic with regards to what you need. It's required by law that you have workers' compensation. It's meant to protect your employees while they are on your work sites. Workers' comp insurance is typically provided by a payroll company. Media services, workers' comp policy covers everyone that we run through payroll, which is a big reason why oftentimes production companies will use a payroll company on top of all the other benefits. Worker compensation is charged on straight time and it's a portion of the earning. If you are working outside of the US, if you are leaving the country, it's very important to have workers' compensation for sure. You definitely want to notify your payroll company in advance. Leaving the US and working abroad definitely has its additional factors to key in, you know, especially now during COVID. Oftentimes, if the work location has hazardous conditions, you know, be it a pandemic or some civil unrest or so, it may be very difficult to provide that insurance. And there is no guarantee that we will be able to provide foreign workers' compensation. So you would need to be notified in advance to know exactly where you're going, what everyone's doing to make sure that happens. You know, special risk situations, you know, production isn't like working in, you know, in a store or an office. We blow things up, you know. We do pyrotechnics, we have weaponry, you know, we can, if you're Michael Bay, you got cars and planes crashing. You know, production is amazing. It's an awesome industry, but because of all the work we do, that additional workers' comp is going to be necessary. So, you know, you work with a production payroll company, you definitely let them know what you're going to have coming down the pipeline so they can make sure that the proper coverage is in place for everyone involved. Fringes. So fringes are a big part of payroll. When you are paying your employees, you must pay into fringes. Now, what are fringes? If you're using any union members or guild members, there are additional special fringes for them. Pension and health and welfare contributions. So if you're working with SAG-AFTRA, DGA, PGA, IA, Teamsters, you have to pay into their pension and health and welfare. And depending on the agreement you sign into, it's typically a percent of the wages or additional costs. Now, for non-union folks, there are other fringes. Those fringes are called payroll taxes. So Social Security, Medicaid, federal unemployment, state unemployment, any local taxes. You as the employer are responsible for contributing to those taxes, just like we had mentioned earlier with independent contractors. So those are additional costs in order to payroll everyone accurately. And, you know, that's what we do all day, every day. And if you need fringe information for a production that's coming up, you reach out to Steve Bizanoff and I, and we'll give you that information so you can plug it into your budget and make sure that you are estimating your overall payroll costs. And if you're using a union employee, that does not mean that you only pay pension, health, and welfare. You get to pay both pension and health, and as well as Social Security, federal unemployment, state unemployment, the whole nine. Union fringes, a great source to find what the current rates are, and fringes are in our Showbiz Labor Guide. Our labor guide is available online. It's completely free. You just register and you go on in, and in there you can find the current rates and fringe information for all the union and guilds all over the US. The most widely used unions in our industry are SAG-AFTRA, Directors Guild of America, HIATSE, Teamsters. So, you know, there are jurisdictions all over the US. So depending on where you're working, you will be working with the said locals. It's also, the agreements are broken down by the content type. You know, there's different agreements for commercials, for features, for new media, for docs, for corporate video. And it's also broken down geographically, regional and national. Union obligations, again, on top of the, you know, pension and health and reporting them accurately, there's rules to working with union employees. There's minimum calls and call times. There's overtime and turnaround rules, meal breaks and meal penalties if you don't meet those meal breaks on time, travel days and distant location rules. So when you're working with union employees, you need to know this to factor it into your budget, to factor it into your shooting schedule. Again, you can refer to our online labor guide, to find out exactly what those contributions are and what those rules are. You cannot ask any union member to waive the provision. That is a big no-no. That's a violation of the contract and the law. So only a designated official, union official, can waive any contract rules. Signature. All right, so to become a signature, to work with any unions and use their members on your production, you need to either become a signatory yourself for the project or borrow a signatory status from another company. So typically you would sign on to the agreement and you would become the signature. And with the agreement, you'll find out all the rules that we just kind of mentioned, what the pension and health will be, and all the details with working with the members. You can also, again, like I said, borrow signatory status from another company. There are companies like CMS and Cranetown that, for whatever reason you cannot or do not want to become a signatory, you can engage their services so that they can be a signatory for your production and hire those union members. Signatory status is definitely needed for SAG-AFTRA.
All right, payroll paperwork. We'll go into that. I'm just going to take a few questions. We've been getting tons of questions in here, so I'm going to try to go through a few of them just to get some answers. Can employees or 1099 personnel decide which taxes and or union benefits can be taken out? First of all, 1099 employee independent contractors are not run by the payroll service, but employees cannot decide which taxes. It's based on the state that you're shooting in, and there's regulations on what taxes to be taken out. You can decide on how many exemptions and so forth by filling out the W-4, but it's really statutory. All right. Another question. Somebody's asking if we work in all states. Yeah, we actually are registered in all the states. So if you have a production going into any state, you call us up for the appropriate rates, and we can provide that, as Anthony said, for your budget. Another question. So if workers' comp is paid on straight time, does overtime hours calculate as straight hours? So a double time hour day is billed as straight. From a workers' comp standpoint, it's billed on the straight time portion. So yeah. And a few more. For non-union projects, how many meal penalties can be accrued in a day? For non-union, really the only state that we regularly see meal penalties is California, and that's going to be based on the hours. I'll be honest, off the top of my head, I don't know how many hours, but so it really could go to a full day if based on the rules and how many hours you go over, it can be accrued, and we can get you the exact rule in California. Based on the independent contractor language, why are so many crew members hired as independent contractors when obviously they shouldn't be? What is the ramification to the production? There are still places that do it. You are correct. The ramification to the production of penalties. Many states have different rules and regulations and penalties. So if you're audited and defined as people are defined as employees, there will be penalties and back taxes that have to be paid. Now, one of the things that we see a lot of people with independent contractors, if you're filing people and paying them as independent contractors, a lot of them end up filing for unemployment, and that's what triggers a lot of audits that we see. So that's something just to be aware of. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a liability. It's a crapshoot. You can pay them as 1099s, but if they're later found to be employees, you will definitely have to pay those back taxes you avoided, as well as be penalized for it. So it's a risk. It's a liability to production.
All right, so I'm going to move on. I know there's tons of questions. I'll try to get as many as possible. Just want to get through the slides. All right, so payroll paperwork. When doing payroll, there's many forms that need to be filled out, such as the I-9, the W-4, time card, kit rental, mileage form, if applicable for those two. In New York and California, you also have the WTPA form. Okay, this is the I-9. Now, right now, I'm displaying the paper forms. We have digital technology to make it easier now, so everything can be done digitally. Obviously, we've been pushing that concept before COVID, but COVID has pushed everybody in the direction of moving towards digital paperwork. So, and when I say digital, we have digital systems online, and then we still have a lot of people still like to use PDFs of these forms, which is also easy to use. And if you want, we still have some diehards who love paper. And that's okay. We can handle all scenarios. All right, so it's an I-9. W-4 is the tax form to put how many deductions so you're taxed correctly on your payroll. All right, and W-4 forms, there's the standard federal, and some states have withholding forms of their own. If you only filled the federal form, that becomes the default for both anyway. All right, and this is a paper time card. Obviously, you can do it digitally on our mobile time card systems. And we talked about exempt employees earlier, and this happens to be an exempt. You'll notice over here in the middle, you have where it just says worked. You're not showing any times. You're just saying work, so they're paid. This is a $6,000 weekly rate that this person is being paid. Now you notice they are breaking down the days, and that needs to be recorded for workers' comp purposes all the day, even though you're paying a flat weekly rate. Okay. And then this is an example of a non-union, non-exempt time card, breaking down all the hours, and you're showing overtime, straight time of 8 and overtime of 4 in this case. And we mentioned box and kit rentals. Box kit rentals are basically reimbursements for use of makeup kits, laptops, camera equipment, audio that the crew member might be providing. Okay, so and you'll want to submit a form to give an inventory of what's being utilized, and we can provide the form, or you might have your own. And without that, it will be taxed as regular income, but most of the crew members do not want to be taxed on that, so it is good to provide that. So this is an example of the box kit rental agreement showing what's being reimbursed for. Also, you have mileage reimbursements. This is one of the few tax over the last couple of years has come down. I mean, the reimbursement amount. I have a feeling next year will go back up, but this is if you reimburse higher than the 56 cents per mile, then that will be taxed. And there's a mileage log. And we can also reimburse for per diems. You go out on location and you're giving a daily per diem. Now, just be aware the per diems are based on the government has what's called CONUS tables, and you see the link there. And there are amounts that are regulated. For example, let's say Los Angeles or San Diego or New York or Albany, New York, all will have different rates. So you can pay up to a certain amount, and over that amount, again, will be taxed. Okay, and another thing that's a big issue for everybody is tax incentives. Okay, and basically, we do a whole seminar on tax incentives. I'm not going to go into all the details, but we have people who can help you with that. But in relation to payroll, when people import the information into their accounting software, you want to track certain things, because in certain states, when you're paying individuals who are local to the state, you might get a higher tax rebate. So you want to track all that information accordingly. So if you need any guidance, you go to our website. This is an example of our incentives map, and you can go to each state and see all the different programs. Okay.
All right, so digital payroll solutions. We at Media Services have invested in tech for a long time. We've really embraced the digital, scene for years. We've been producing and working with, trying to develop digital tools that are meant to, make production life easier. We've had our Showbiz software division that's been around for over 20 years and very well known in the industry. And then we have a lot of tools that are available solely to our clients. So I'm going to go through a couple of them here with you now. So TIM Digital Onboarding. TIM is a fantastic system, a secure platform designed by crew members for crew. It's meant to capture all your start forms. So Steve just went through some of those start forms like the I-9, the W-4, WTPA form. Other docs you can add on to the system as well, any NDAs, COVID compliance, deal memos. All those forms can be digitized and sent to your crew members electronically. They can fill it all out online and resubmit it to you to production to then come to us in payroll. A lot of delays, especially in the first payroll run, is, when things were hard copy, was, tracking down everybody for those I-9s and W-4s, making sure they didn't leave out their social numbers or like not sign. This is definitely meant to streamline the process, more efficient, secure, digitized. That's excellent. Mobile Time Card is a cloud-based platform. It's a timekeeping program. So you clock in and clock out, meal breaks. You can actually add things like kit rentals, your per diem and mileage onto it, electronically. That also gets transferred to us directly. Again, you're not keying in a lot of items. You're not shuffling paperwork and doing uploads. A lot more efficient. The client portal and digital PDF. So the client portal is where things start. If you were to engage with us here at Media Services, that's where you would start your accounts. The platform itself, the portal, is a great tool, not just for setting up the account, but also for uploading documents. If you don't want to go with TIM or mobile time cards and you want to go hard copy or fillable PDFs, this is where you would upload your docs. They'll go directly to us. It's secure, it's efficient, and you can also download invoices and communicate directly with your payroll coordinators. Showbiz Time Card program has been around for a long time, I think nearly 20 years. It's a desktop-based program. It's widely used in TV and feature films. It works with other payroll companies as well. We have 2 separate programs, one for film and TV crew, and then one for SAG-AFTRA. Those are available for retail purchase. If you work with us at Media Services, you do get copies to use for free on your production.
Now, we also have other tools. Since many of you might know, we're now part of the Cast and Crew family of companies. Some of our other sister divisions have other additional platforms. For example, CAPS Pay at our CAPS division has payroll portal hours to gross calculations that can be done online. Also a client portal, and then through Cast and Crew we have Starts Plus, which is another start system, and Hours Plus, which is digital time capture. So those are all available, and we have some other products as well. We spent hours on all these, but it's just stuff you want to be aware of to make, as everybody's moving towards more electronic tools. Some other tools, we have the Showbiz Budgeting and Actualization, which interfaces with the payroll. So you can download the payroll invoices into your actual costs and it will track it for you. And that's available in general, or our clients get it no charge. We also interface with Movie Magic for our accounting software, Media Web, and as Anthony mentioned, Showbiz Time Cards. And we also work with CAPS Plus accounting and PSL accounting. All right, so just some more issues you need to worry about when in production. When working with minors, you need to, in most states, not all, but most states, you must have work permits from them when they're getting paid. Okay, and also in New York and California, you have additional laws. Like California has the Coogan Law, New York has the Former Education and Trust Act, and in those states, 15% of their wages will be withheld and must be put into a trust account. And New York State actually requires the production company, even though you're working with a payroll service, state knows that you're in control of the minors. So they want all production companies that are hiring minors to register before you can pay them. And we mentioned the Jackie Coogan Law. This will give you some of the details. Now, right to work laws. There's many right to work states throughout the country, and basically the advantage to the right to work law is really for the employees. They cannot be forced to join a union. So, and people also think if they go into a right to work state, they can ignore their union agreements, and that's not true. You're still obligated to pay and follow your union agreements. And if you do hire non-union workers, which, as we said, they can't be forced to be union, you still have to pay in there and follow the union rules because you're obligated, but they're not forced to join. Okay. And here's a list of the right to work states. And by the way, this slideshow will be available to anybody who wants it after. So if you need any of this information. And other rules that we have mentioned, union rules, and there's a lot. So we're going to help monitor following the meal penalties. And actually, in California, they also have laws for meal penalties for non-union workers as well. Most states don't have that, but if they're union, obviously there are meal penalty rules. Timely payment of workers. You want to make sure that you're paying your workers promptly. Most states, you really need to pay based on the pay cycles, which are usually weekly or bi-weekly or semi-monthly. We actually see the most timely payment claims out of California. So we always recommend, especially there, you want to make sure, because you can't pay employees like they're a company. So like there's some people try to pay in 30 days, and that they can really make a claim if you try to do that. So I always recommend to watch out for that. And then there's turnaround and forced call rules. Those you'll see heavily in union contracts. So they need to get the appropriate breaks. So you always want to look at your contracts to make sure that that's taken care of. And also in some states, so if you have a really long day, you got to make sure they get a break until the next work start day. And I think we mentioned earlier Waste Theft Prevention Act rules. Those basically are additional forms that right now is only required in New York and California, and they're both slightly different rules. Those are forms that when these people are hired, they must fill out. So it's documented what their rates are, hours, and basic information. It's sort of like a deal memo. So just more fun paper to deal with. And those can be given out via the digital systems like TIM. As we said, New York and California, these are the two forms. And here we have the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is, we've all heard about this over the last 4 years, has started under President Barack Obama. And this was to provide cost-effective insurance so everybody can get insurance. There has been a change over the last administration. The individual mandate was removed, and that's where people will be penalized if they don't have insurance. And but the employer mandate is still in place. Okay, so and that requires that you provide, if you have over 50 employees working at least 30 hours, that you offer health insurance. And other laws give you basic information on New York sick leave and California sick leave, and the payroll service is tracking to make sure you know who's eligible and that the employees are aware of that as well. Another issue we run into is unpaid interns. And that's really a matter of, people might have heard like the show Jersey Shore was hit a bunch of years ago, because they were putting in interns in really to replace paid employees. And that is basically illegal and was done in a lot of companies. So these days you're finding most companies, if they're hiring interns, are paying, though you can hire unpaid interns, but they're not to be replacing paid employees, like getting rid of all your PAs with free unpaid interns. But unfortunately, some companies got rid of their internship programs because of this. And here's a list of the 6 factors. And key is that it must be training and educational and beneficial to the intern, less than beneficial to the production company only. Okay. And also, last couple of years, we're seeing more and more of this. New York and California, especially, anti-sexual harassment laws, and there are requirements for giving training to your employees, or that they have proof that they've gotten training over a certain period of time. So, and that becomes the responsibility of the production companies, and you definitely want to check with your own legal counsel how your company is handling that. And other laws, and you can go on forever. New York Paid Family Leave Act was implemented a couple of years ago, and basically helps provide wage replacement, so people can bond with their child and child care or care for relatives. Okay, and more details on that. And there's actually a withholding from the employees, which helps fund those benefits. And as we've gone through COVID, people had a flag time if people were getting paid sick leave for COVID time off. This way, when they went for the loans, this is obviously, hopefully, we're coming to the end of this. And COVID, and it's just basic information on COVID time cards. And the big question mark for questions and answers, I'm just going to try to see, we're sort of running towards the end of our time. Just looking at some other questions that came up, and let's see if we can go through some of these. How do we get access to digital time cards and online paperwork? Digital time cards are all available through our client portal, and you can find that on our website. Otherwise, you can reach out to us and we can get you the link. I've been taxed for my kit rentals. How can I avoid that in the future? Most payroll services, you basically want to make sure, as we said, you fill out the kit rental forms and they get submitted with your time cards. So that should help you with that. Unless there are some payroll services that are taxing it no matter what. So that's the only thing to watch out for. How does the digital time card work? Are we able to send freelancers a time card they can submit through the portal? Well, there's 2 things you could be talking about. You could some people will give PDF time cards to their crew members, have them fill it out. they'll send it back to you, and then you can upload it to the payroll service. Or there's the mobile time card system where everything is done through the internet. You send links, and the crew member can enter the time, and then production could approve it, or production can enter the time and send it for approval to the crew member, and then it gets digitally submitted to the payroll service. So there are both options. Okay. Just going through a couple more here. Do you pay for meal breaks, or is that excluded? Most people don't pay for meal breaks, but there's nothing stopping you from it. You don't have to. Okay. Are mobile time cards and Showbiz time cards the same thing? I use Tim onboarding, but the time card system for Tim as well as Showbiz oriented towards long form. We've been using PDFs with DocuSign solutions. Do you have a system that is simpler and easy and oriented towards commercials? Digitally, we actually, our mobile system is definitely more geared to a long form. We do have a digital system that can be used through one of our sister companies, and we'll actually talk to you. I have you recorded, the person who's asking, but any commercial clients who are interested, I'll be glad to talk to about. Please send slides somebody's asking for. We'll take care of that. A lot of questions, and we are honestly skipping through a lot of the questions because just don't have time. We will get back to you individually. We will go through all the questions. We have them all recorded. And we are getting requests for the slideshow on the question line, and we will get that to you as well. Okay. Let's see. Who pays for workers' comp claims if we payroll with you? Is that still on production? Now, if there is a claim for workers' comp is claimed against media services as the payroll, and that's paid out by the payroll service. You're paying for the insurance in essence, and the payroll services insurance takes care of that. So that's not taken care of by the production.
Yeah, that's right. If someone were to be injured on your production, you would, fill out the proper paperwork, alert our workers' comp department, and they'll take it from there.
Exactly. All right, and just trying to get through a few more here. A lot of requests for the slideshow. And does media services provide consulting services? We already have a payroll company who like to resource to talk regarding employees on a case-by-case basis. Realistically, you're always welcome to call to ask questions. You get our resource mostly if we are your payroll service, but always feel free to reach out to ask questions. We're coming close. Let's see. All right, so I think we're pretty much coming to the end. So that's really it. Always feel free to ask this. Honestly, we do webinars all the time and try to answer your questions. There can be questions that are specifically geared towards your specific situation. So feel free to reach out to me or Anthony, and we'll be glad to answer any questions for you. This is our contact information. So a lot of people remember questions after the webinars are over. That is definitely something that happens. So feel free to either call or email us, and we'll be glad to help you with any payroll questions or any questions on the software. And we hope you learned something here. And that's pretty much it. And we will be getting back to all your questions and requests. If you requested to send out the slideshow or any other information, we'll be glad to get back to you. So thank you for attending. We appreciate it. And
thank you.
feel free to watch for any of our other webinars on the website. The schedule is up there, and you will be getting a link to the recording of the webinar if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you.